Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. This is for anyone who is a business owner. Maybe you lead a team. Maybe you're a C-suite executive. Anybody that's looking to move their life forward professionally, even personally, this is for you. And if you're finding yourself somewhat stuck in your situation, maybe not hitting the numbers that you want to hit, maybe not feeling that you're connecting with your team, coaching may very well be in order for you. And we're going to talk to an excellent leadership coach, executive coach, and he joins us today. Got a lot of insight coming your way. Reginald Bullock, we call him Reggie B, is on the program. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm well, Steve. Thank you for having me. It's
good to have you here. I'm very curious. You know, now that we've gotten out of COVID, things have kind of settled a little bit. Still working on the political transition and all of that. There's a lot going on in the world, too.
Right.
What are you hearing overall, by and large, from the people that you work with?
That's a broad question. So if I were to say, what am I hearing? Growth, development, change, work-life balance, how to manage through the different cultures and generations, and communication, because we're in such a virtual world, has taken over, whereas a lot of folks want to go back into the office. Sometimes it's lack of mentorship because it's not face-to-face interaction for that happening. So I'm hearing all of that.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm wondering, do you think that a lot of people thought, oh, the virtual thing, this is going to be great. It's going to be so much easier. And it really didn't turn out as they expected it to?
Yeah, I think that the virtual platforms have their place. And certainly as a backup to not being in the office and in person, it works. But there's a lot of gaps that are created when that happens. For instance, communication is 80% nonverbal and 20% verbal. So if you have 25 people on a virtual platform and their screens are turned off, what type of communication is occurring? And even in this setting that you and I are on, right? We're looking at each other from the chest up. You don't know what my shoes look like. You don't know what my belt look like. You don't know what kind of pants I'm wearing. And therefore, that nonverbal communication is not occurring. The energy that radiates between two people on a screen is a lot different than in person. So I think that there is an impact. I'm not going to say that there is no place for it, but at the same time, the growth, the development, the mentorship, the training, a lot of that has created gaps as a result of the virtual. So now what you're seeing is the transition of leadership, looking for successions, and not a lot of people are ready to take over because they haven't been trained. They don't have the experience because you don't get that from your house.
Interesting insight you have there, because a lot of social media is what we want the person to show us. And it may not be the reality. And even when you talk about Zoom video, to your point, if we were in the same office, you'd get full disclosure. Right. Quite honestly, I'm wearing a bathing suit and flip-flops right now. You never know.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm suited and booted because that's how I've been trained.
I got it. Same.
Right.
But you're not getting the big picture, for lack of a better description. But when somebody walks in a room, you're picking up the full, to your point, full energy, the total package, if you will, where, this is okay and this works in many regards, but it's almost like social. You're seeing what I want you to see and vice versa. And we hope that it's a reasonable representation of who we are, but maybe it's not. But if I walked into that room where you are, you'd get me. There's no hiding. This is who I am, and that's it. And we're us. But you understand what I'm saying? It's almost like follows social media in some regards.
I do. And often leaders have to get it right.
Yeah.
And so when they're evaluating or judging or interpreting someone's behavior and actions, to be able to make a decision, and they're only receiving a small percentage of the communication, those nonverbals, it's hard for them to gauge through their emotional intelligence and capabilities all of their knowledge to help that person or to make a decision on that person because they don't know that person.
It's a great
and that's
point.
One of the biggest challenges I see in leadership. They don't know their people.
In this regard, you're not getting all the information. You can't deduce everything because you don't have all the pieces. So you have to make a reasonable using your instinct and intuition. For you on the coaching level, what brought you here, Reggie?
I think it's sort of evolved. I spent 30 years in the Air Force. So part of my career, I was in training. I was officers training school instructor. And I found myself in a lot of leadership positions where I was actually mentoring people and being mentored and being coached. And so the growth and development in the military is very deliberate. And I appreciated that. But what I had noticed is over time, I had been coaching and mentoring people. And so as I transitioned out of the military into the corporate world, I started thinking about my own practice. What am I going to do when I grow up? And at that point, I went to Georgetown University for their professional coaching program, learned a lot more about me than I expected to learn about me, and realized how screwed up I was. Had I known then what I know now, and I'd be different. And so the transformation that occurred in me just from being a student, I realized I was missing a lot. So as I walked that path of coaching more and more, I somehow got good at it. And the clients that I had appreciated the work that I did. And I felt it was needed to the point that it became my purpose of helping people. And so the more training I received in PQ and EQ and strength training and Myers-Briggs and all of those types that helps a coach, to have tools to help their clients, the more I learned about me. And then I started reflecting on other people. At that point, I said, I can do this. And that's when I hung my shingle and became G-Town LLC and Reggie B, Reginald Bullock, Coach Reggie, whatever they want to call me. But the goal is to help people because I like doing it.
You mentioned Myers-Briggs, similar to Clifford Strengths, isn't it?
Yes. Well, each one is different. It's hard to say similar because I was trained through the Elizabeth Myers School. So, they're very particular about being who they are. But what it does is allows you to have self-awareness. So most of the strength training, Clifford Strengths, Myers-Briggs, and there's a host of them. There's over 30 of them. At the end of the day, it comes down to self-awareness. And the more you're aware of yourself, then you can govern yourself as you interact with others so that you can become aware of them and just understand that dynamic. And I'm going to always lean on the energy because there's a lot of energy transmission that we don't really pay attention to until we are self-aware.
We'll go there later on the energy side. When it comes to the assessing your strengths, using one of those tests, there was a surprise for me, and I'll share in a moment, but I'm curious on your end, was there a strength that you didn't know existed, but found that out after taking one of those tests or going through your journey?
That I didn't know existed.
Yeah, or you didn't know it was so much in the forefront. We all know kind of an area of where our strengths are, let's say our top 5, 10 strengths, but maybe one was higher than the other?
So the challenge with that, the short answer is yes. But the challenge with that, I grew up dyslexic and illiterate. So I wasn't as smart as some of the other folks. So therefore, when you don't know, and you discover something, that's awesome. So for me, I kind of knew I know who I am as Reggie in various strengths. But when you label it, it takes on a whole different persona. Mm-hmm. When you label someone as extrovert or introvert or commander or feeling versus thinking, perception and intuition, and you're able to drill deep into those different traits or characteristics, well, now you can figure out how to use them deliberately and intentionally. Whereas prior to, you were just being you and you didn't know it was a strength. And just because you call it a strength doesn't mean that you don't have other capabilities. For instance, in the Myers-Briggs scale, we all are familiar with introvert versus extrovert. A person that's introvert doesn't mean they're 100% introvert. It just means that's their preference. So they could very well be 60% introvert and 40% extrovert, and vice versa, or 80% and 20%. And so as you label those various traits and characteristics, you also drill deep into figuring out I don't want to say percentage, but the amount of preference you have towards that. And sometimes how much of that radiates out of you intentionally or unintentionally, because the unintentional might not necessarily be a good thing. So now you see what you can work on to simmer that down a little bit.
Sure.
You may have anxiety. You may have other types of characteristics that causes you to peg in a different area that's not so good. And you may need to simmer that down a little bit. So when you identify those characteristics, in your term strengths, then you get to see those and you're able to now figure out, how do I work on that?
Taking the Clifford Strengths test, and I'm on the board of the Girl Scouts, and we were doing a retreat, and they said, before you show up, everybody, let's take the test. So
Right.
I'm laying in bed the night before, it's late. I'm like, all right, let me just do this. How accurate it's going to be. Very insightful. And I'm usually the person that calls other people out and say, do you realize you're an empath? No, I have a friend who's a nurse, and every second day she needs to take off because she just drains. I don't know what it is. Like, because you're taking on other people's energy. You need to recover. You need to realize that. I take the strength assessment test. Number one was communication. All right. No brainer there. I've been doing that forever.
Right.
Number two strength was empathy for me. I had no idea that would come up.
But it makes sense.
It does, right?
Sense.
Yeah, I get it.
It makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. Especially in what I do in picking up on other people, their energy, where their head is at, feeling that. I figured it would be within the top 10, top 12. Never thought it would be number 2. But to your point, taking what shows up and then using it to your advantage once it's identified. I think it's the same thing with coaching. Once things are revealed to you with working with somebody like yourself, we have a better understanding of who we are, why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and how to move our lives forward. If you were to go back right now to your teens or your 20s, what would you tell? What would you tell your younger self?
Oh, wow. So many different things. Read more, listen more, and don't be so full of yourself. It's not that serious. Yeah, I was pretty obnoxious. Not obnoxious. I think I was cocky, arrogant, and just thought I was it. Right?
Interesting.
And so often I tell people, you're not the only one in the room, and everybody's not like you. And based on the 16 parts of Myers-Briggs, or the 16 types, I'm just one type. There are other types. There are 15 other types who are equally as responsible and deserve the same opportunities that I deserve and the same time in the room or in a meeting. It's not all about Reggie. And so therefore, in coaching, we learn this thing, this tool we use on ourselves. It's called 3 before me and 4 before more. And 3 before me means once I say something, once I speak, I must shut up and let 3 other people speak before I speak. And then 4 before more is after I speak, then I need to shut up and let 4 people speak before I speak. This is good for people in meetings who just can't help themselves. They got to jump in. And extroverts, have a tendency to do that more than introverts. And so it's a way to govern myself. So in my 20s, in my younger self, I think I could have used some of those tools to just shut up. Yeah.
Now, deep question coming.
Uh-oh. I thought that one was deep, but go ahead.
I roll deep. Reggie, do you think that because you revealed, and I appreciate your transparency, you had some challenges that you revealed a little while ago. Do you think that you wanted to be the center of attention and didn't shut up, as you said, because maybe you were doing that to make up for those other challenges?
Definitely.
Okay.
I was overcompensating.
Sure.
Hey, I was a New York DJ for a while, in New York City, right? And I loved the spotlight, the limelight, the attention. I was a model. And so a lot of those things that I did put me on stage, put me as the center of attraction. Of course, DJ, you're it, right? And I was in a major club called Leviticus International at 34th and Broadway. And so I believe part of it is my desire to do it, my ability to do it, and the challenge to learn everything else you need to do. But the other is because I lack in other areas. Like I said, I was dyslexic, illiterate, and a few other things coming from the Richard Allen projects of Philadelphia. I wasn't that knowledgeable. And so in order to compete against people who are knowledgeable, who are well-read, who do have access and exposure, then you do I don't want to say overcompensate. You do what you have to do to compete. And part of that just made me feel the way I felt of confidence, as opposed to not having any confidence at all. And all of those cultural elements that I had to grow up in became a detriment to me as opposed to a motivator.
Deep question number 2.
Uh-oh.
What did you learn from your father?
Well, nothing, because I never met him. I grew up without a father. So my mother got pregnant in her first year of college. He basically said, "I'm not the father." And I didn't even know his name until I was around 15 or 16 by accident, looking at a birth certificate, sneaking around my mother's bedroom. And she just had energy of me not meeting him. So I can't say that I learned anything from him. I'll say I've learned a lot as a result of him. And that's why I wrote my first book, Father to Son, The Guide to Growing Up in a Difficult World. And what I learned was that it's important to have a father. It's important to have someone of a father figure to help navigate. And I didn't have those types of things, from my father. And therefore, as a father, it was important for me to make sure I had that for my son. And I help a lot of other young men, right? I mentor a lot of people.
Yep.
But that's a deep question, because never met my father. Don't know I know who he is now. Didn't know I had 2 sisters and a brother until about 10 years ago. But again, self-awareness.
Yeah. I gotcha. And we have some parallels here. I knew my father, spent some time with him, only saw him maybe once a month. Passed away when I was 21 suddenly. And I only found out in the last year or two that I knew my parents got divorced when I was very young. They were already getting divorced before I was even born. They started that process. And I just found out this past summer that I have a half sister.
Wow.
And I met her in New York City over the summer.
Awesome.
Yeah, very cool. And she's about 15 years younger, and she lives in Atlanta. And, when I think back to a lesson from my father, and by the way, side note, you say you mentor. I'm in a men's group, been for almost a year now, and we honor our father, whether you liked him or not. You take a lesson if you can from them. And we in the group, we only go by our last names. And when I think about it, because you honor your father, when I think about it, he said 3 things to me. And when I was little, I was like, whatever. And they were, and the reason I'm bringing this up is you said it. Learn how to read. Learn how to dance. He loved to dance.
That's cool.
Ladies, man. And learn how to breathe. And I never got the breathing thing until the last, call it 4 years, where, because I had a little anxiety when I was younger, and just to breathe, take a deep breath. And I don't believe he was very spiritual at all. But that's what he left me with, and made sense. Now it makes sense. Now I get it. And just a powerful lesson.
Breathing is a coaching thing, by the way. And almost 100% of my clients, we talk about that.
Nice.
So your dad had some coaching in him.
He didn't know it. For sure.
And you mentioned the father piece, right? I'm co-chair of Fathers Initiative down here in the DMV area for our fraternity Kappa Alpha Psi in one of our chapters, Alexander Fairfax. Nice. And we have only men come in there predominantly, and some, they can bring their children, their sons mostly. And we talk about some deep subjects that particularly African-American men don't want to talk about and stay away from. It's taboo. And we give them a safe and brave space to just be vulnerable. So, yeah. Trying to be like you when I grew up, Steve.
But you're saying all the things. I'm living that life. One of the principles of the group that I'm in is be vulnerable, mask down, be vulnerable. And whenever we have a meeting, and it's at once a week, and we see it turning a little superficial, it's like, whoa. All right, we're not getting anything accomplished here because everybody's wearing a mask. Take them down, and let's be who needs a circle? What do you got going on? Let's talk about that. Difference between coaching and leadership coaching.
Okay.
Can you define that?
Yeah, certainly. So, and I'll add one more to it. You have coaching, leadership coaching, and executive coaching. So most people are familiar with coaching, like basketball coach or music coach and those types of coach. And, in many cases, it's going to help you with your self-awareness, develop transformational change, and, provide you with critical challenges for you to grow and develop. And that's kind of a standard in many different coaching because, to be honest with you, the list of the types of coaching is probably larger than most people could ever even imagine. I mean, I know a person who is strictly an energy coach. I know a person who's a grief coach. So there are a lot of coaches. Leadership coaching, on the other hand, makes the distinction and the assumption that you are responsible for people. And so now you're leading people. And you might be a manager, a supervisor, a director, a president, CEO, owner of business, etc. But you have a lot of people under you, whether it be 5 or 5,000, right? And so you have a responsibility. And I'll just throw my leadership mantra out there, and that is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Because not all, just because you're a leader in a leadership position don't mean you're a leader, right? And I'll even say something that we often say, 80% of the people out there that are in leadership positions are not necessarily leaders. And so to that end, there is a distinction between leadership coaching because you are coaching leaders to be leaders and you're coaching leaders in their own headspace on their journey of leadership. Leadership is a lot of work. It's a journey. And they may not know that at the time. And so depending on where they are in that continuum of being that leader, a coach works with their clients to be able to become a better leader. My last book, Become the Best Version of Yourself. So now executive coaching is much different because often executive coaches are those multi-million dollar and even $billion CEOs at the highest level of executive. And, it may be global, Jeff Bezos and, folks that are really responsible for not just people, but a company, a business, a product, a service that's impactful worldwide to so many people, not just responsible for their employees. And so their level of responsibility and challenge is even, I'll say, heavier. And I was going to say different, but it's heavier. And the responsibilities, the list of responsibilities are so significant. Money and budgets and people and politics and all of that stuff. So those are the 3 distinct coachings that I do. I do more of leadership coaching and executive coaching than I do the other coaching. Although I'm certified. I am certified through the International Coaching Federation, ICF, at the PCC level, professional coaching certification. And soon I'm going to be MCC, which is the master coach. It's the highest level of coaching certification you can get. But I still prefer the leadership environment and executive environment because I spent a lot of time in both those environments. And so, the difference between coaching and consulting, sometimes they want me to take my coaching hat on and put my consulting hat on. And because I've lived in those environments, I can do so. But to stay in just the coaching environment, I'm not trying to teach somebody the basic stuff. I love leadership. I'm a student of leadership. So that's why I prefer to be in that domain.
Love your passion.
Yeah.
Your passion shines through for what you do.
Thank you.
It really does.
Thank you.
We're out of time. I have to tell you, refreshing talking with you, Reggie. And I very much appreciate that you get the energy thing. It's multifaceted. And when you add that to the coaching aspect, and I would love to dig deeper into that next time we get together. Can we do that?
We can talk about that during the next session.
That'd be fantastic. How do we find you? If this is resonating with someone, maybe they're trying to up their game, they have questions, how do they find you?
So I'm easy. I'm Reggie Bullock, right? So www.reggiebullock.com. It's that simple. Just type in www.reggiebullock.com or Google my name. All my books will pop up. I have an agent that takes care of my keynote speaking engagements and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, you will reach her on the website. She can help navigate you to whatever services or products you're trying to receive. And then, of course, if you just want to have a conversation or a chemistry call, I don't mind doing that either. But I'm not going to put my phone number out there right now to the world, because you know what happens after that.
Well, it's all good. That's why we have a website and a contact page.
Yes,
for sure. Refreshing talking with you, Reggie. Lots to dig into next time we get together. I'm looking forward. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Have a great day, Steve.
You too. Appreciate it. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.